Louisiana passed a law to display the Ten Commandments in every public school classroom. Is that even legal? Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for joining our conversation here today, and thank you for liking and sharing our videos. It's how we get to meet new people, and we appreciate the fact that you care enough about our content to let your friends see it as well. Matt Krause is an attorney who does work for us here at First Liberty Institute. He's had a busy week. Hi, Matt. Thanks for making time for us.
Hey, Stuart. It's great to be with you.
Let's talk about what's happening in Louisiana. What does the law that was just signed by the governor there say that schools need to do?
It says that schools, when having a Ten Commandments display, the Ten Commandments has to be of a certain size, have certain language, certain format. If a display is donated to that school, then that school must put it up inside its classroom walls.
Okay, and one thing people always imagine is, oh, I'm sure the teacher will print one this big and put it on the wall.
Right.
But the law covers that, is what you just said, right?
That's right. And conversely, some people are, is it going to be a life-size thing? You know, it's 16 by 20. All these documents have to be the same format where they're easily readable, but don't take up too much space on the wall.
Okay. Let's talk about this a bit. Not surprisingly, the people who always complain about any hint of faith in public, and particularly in public schools, they're already threatening a lawsuit. But there's really nothing to be afraid of here, is there? Because this is covered.
That's right. Thanks to First Liberty, I give y'all a ton of credit because of the work that you did in Kennedy, where we threw out the lemon test. And a lot of people don't know that the Ten Commandments were up on the walls in public schools until 1980. It was only in 1980 when the Supreme Court looked at a Kentucky law that was very similar to Louisiana's that they said, no, it's a violation of the lemon test, therefore it's unconstitutional, so we're not going to allow that. Thanks to First Liberty and their great work and Coach Kennedy, the lemon test has been thrown out and replaced with the history and tradition test. And so you no longer have to worry about those precedents that were based solely on the lemon test. There has to be new reasoning behind it.
And what you just explained helps us understand why so many of us hear about this and we think, oh, no, you can't do that. My whole lifetime I've heard that you can't do that. Well, guess what? It just changed, and that's why it's now okay again, right?
That's right. I think people are just starting to wake up to the ramifications of what that Kennedy decision did. I know First Liberty was on it. Coach Joe got a great decision for himself, but even more than that, with that lemon test thrown out, it was a paradigm shift for religious liberty litigation in the country, thanks to the efforts of First Liberty. And so people are starting to wake up to that. And this case, I think, is going to help them. This law is going to help understand the importance of what actually happened in the Kennedy case.
The folks who object to this, generally, they're not going to have a problem with thou shalt not murder. No problem with don't steal. They might quibble about committing adultery. I mean, well, it's the culture we're in now. But what really bugs them is the first part about having no other gods before me. How is that okay in a public school classroom? When people ask us about that, how do we respond?
Yeah, and it's a great question. You go back to the new test from the Supreme Court, which is history and tradition. Yeah. There's not a document in America's history other than maybe the Constitution and Declaration of Independence that has been more ubiquitous, more prevalent in American law and American culture and American education than the Ten Commandments. And interestingly, if you look at all 10 commandments, the states in America have had laws for each and every one of those, whether you consider them the secular commandments or the religious commandments. American law has been promulgated on each and every one of those commandments. So they're all part of the history and tradition of America. And whether you like it or agree with it or not, you can't escape the fact that the Ten Commandments played a pivotal role in the foundation and history of America.
It was even pointed out when this came up in the Supreme Court that, well, it's right up there in the courtroom. There's Moses. Now, there's a lot of other people who are part of the history of law in the world, but there's Moses with the Ten Commandments inside the courtroom. The doors to the Supreme Court have an emblem that represents the Ten Commandments. Outside on one of the friezes, or whatever you call it, up at the top on the eastern side, well, guess what? Moses is up there too. This is part of our history and tradition. I mean, it's everywhere.
That's right. And it's not just the Supreme Court building. Go to the U.S. Capitol and you will see images of Moses and other things as well in the Capitol. You'll see it all around Washington, D.C. Why? Because the Ten Commandments played such a pivotal role in the founding principles of America that it's inescapable that that's part of the history and tradition of our country.
And one way I like to talk about this when people ask if they want my opinion is that it's one thing to preach a sermon in class. I get that. We don't want sermons preached in class. I'm fine with that. Unless you're at a Christian school, then it's appropriate. But in a public school setting, not appropriate. But to at least consider the ideas of Christianity, the ideas of Jewish tradition, at least to have them presented so you can weigh them and consider them, that seems like a proper part of a public education. If you're going to be a well-rounded student, you need to know about these things.
Absolutely. And not only that, but the importance in the history of the Ten Commandments in our founding. I think it's great for students to ask questions. Why do we have this on the wall? Oh, that's the Ten Commandments. Why the Ten Commandments? Why not some other religious text? Why not something from the New Testament? Why not all these? Well, let me tell you why. Because our country was founded, and you can kind of systematically go through that. And as you know, Stuart, if you lose your history or you forget your history, it's hard to know to continue to go where you're going. So I think this can actually help facilitate and cultivate conversations with students in Louisiana that will help them deepen their appreciation and understanding of American history.
And part of the law, if I understand it, that was just signed in, the bill that was signed into law, is that there should be an explanation of what you just said next to the Ten Commandments, right? So they're covering all the bases here.
That's exactly right. And there's other historical documents. People say, well, what about the Constitution? What about the Northwest Ordinance? What about the Mayflower Compact? Put those up too. That's fine. We would never say not to, but there is something special and unique about the Ten Commandments, and we're thrilled that the Pelican State has taken the leadership in making this law a reality, and we are hopeful that many, many other states will follow suit.
Help us understand, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but I think it'll help people to understand the impact of how we got from the Bladensburg Peace Cross decision, which was a World War I Veterans Memorial, a cross 40 feet tall in the middle of an intersection in Maryland, and Joe Kennedy wanting to take a knee and say a prayer after football games. How do you get from that to the end of the Lemon Test and the Ten Commandments on the wall in Louisiana classrooms? Help connect the dots there to see how we get from that start to that end.
That's a great question. And it really starts in the 1970s with the Lemon Test and how it had been used for 5 decades to prohibit religious displays, religious expressions, religious displays all across the country. First Liberty, again, I'm going to give y'all credit. And I think you were brilliant in how you went about it. You took every opportunity to bring up the faultiness, the flaws of the Lemon Test in every chance you got in front of the Supreme Court. So in the Peace Cross case, that was the first kind of blow against the Lemon Test, where First Liberty said, no, we ought to be able to have these public symbols displayed for the men who gave the ultimate sacrifice to die for us. We should be able to honor them with the cross, and that is not against the Constitution. And in that decision, you started seeing a little rumblings of maybe this Lemon Test isn't a workable solution. And then you continue to go on in 2022, and in the Kennedy case, First Liberty had another chance, and the Supreme Court now took full advantage of that and said, we're going to get rid of the Lemon Test. So all of these cases, all of these situations that had been disallowed under the Lemon Test now had new life under the history and tradition test of Kennedy. So it really was that kind of progression that leads us here. If Louisiana had passed this law even 3 years ago, it would have been struck down pretty quick. But thanks to the great work of First Liberty and the fruits of that, now we can start doing many of these things that we hadn't been able to do for a half century, including putting the Ten Commandments up in schoolhouses.
And that's something that's really helpful to think about is people wonder about the work we do because you see the Coach Kennedy victory and you think, well, that's great for that one coach at that one school that he gets to take a knee and pray. But we kept saying, no, this is about more than that. In fact, it's about more than other coaches praying on the field. It's about changing the way that courts consider religious liberty from here forward. And this is now the fruit of that. We're beginning to see the outcome of that. And this is just the beginning. There's more to come. What else can we do as we start restoring faith in America? What are other things that people can be doing in their states?
Well, you may have seen time and again over the last several years, several decades, that big Ten Commandment monuments that had set outside of courthouses or county property had been struck down. Pretty much all that was based on the Lemon Test. Now that that's gone, we're encouraging folks to put those Ten Commandment monuments back up on public property. You saw a lot of nativity scenes, creches, those menorahs and displays of faith such as those being taken down for years because of the Lemon Test. Now that's out of the way. So we'd encourage you, come this Christmas season, put those nativity scenes back up. For Hanukkah, put those menorahs back up. There was even some prayers, whether it was city council meetings, school board meetings, other things like that, that had been taken away, again, under the guise of the lemon test. We no longer have to worry about that. So we'd encourage everybody, no matter where you are, encourage your city council, your school board, encourage your state legislature and others, have those public prayers again, because not only is it legal, we think it's profitable for the society as a whole.
Very good. Anything else you'd like to share before I let you go? I appreciate all your insights.
Yeah, I think there's always so much negativity in our society, and sometimes it feels like you're losing or you're not making any headway. This is an area, this public displays of religion, where we are making great ground, making great strides. So I hope people are hopeful. I hope people are encouraged. And I hope people are excited about this opportunity we've been given, thanks to the great work of First Liberty and others, to really restore faith in America. And it's an exciting time, and it's an optimistic time. So we need to take every opportunity we can.
Very good. Matt Krause, thank you for making time for us, and thanks for the work you do for us. You do help us out here from where you sit. Thank you for that.
It's an honor to be on the team. Thanks for letting me do it.
All right, and thank you for watching. If this resonates with you, if this is the kind of change you would like to see happening in the United States of America, well, that's what we do. So we invite you to partner with us, to come alongside, because your fingerprints can be on these decisions as well as we move forward and win more victories for religious freedom in America. Just look for the big red Give button on our website at firstlibertylive.com. First Liberty is fighting for what matters most.